Welcome to another beginners tutorial where we get hands-on experience practicing HTML and CSS. Okay, so this is another tutorial where we delve into the world of web development by building this user interface. So what you're seeing is kind of a representation of an individual with some set of skills. So we have different logos for programming languages and frameworks, and then we have the photo of the individual in the middle just to showcase that this individual possess this set of skills, just spinning around the person. Okay, so by the end of this tutorial you have a complete project that looks like exactly like this, that you can use it anywhere on your personal portfolio if you so prefer. But yes, so at the end of the tutorial you should be able to add all of the CSS animations and CSS keyframes. Okay. Alright, so back to my text editor. All you can see here is a folder called tutorial, and in that folder I just have a CSS folder and then a file name style.css. I also do have a folder called images which contains all of the images that I'll be using in this video. So I'll leave a link in the description to all of these files that you can easily access. And then I just have an index.html with the basic HTML boilerplate, and in the header section I just have style.css, a link to my style sheet which is CSS, and then we are accessing the style.css file. Okay, alright, so without much, let's just jump straight into writing the HTML. Okay, so the first thing we want to look at is how to put together this ring. Okay, so if you look at the individual logos, they are spinning around a circle, and that's just what we are going to create. So to create that, we want to start with a div, and in that div we want to give it a class, and let's just give that a class of ring. Okay, now this ring class would make up the circle that the individual logos are spinning on. Okay, now for us to see how this looks in the browser, we have to go in and style the ring. Okay, now inside your CSS file, as you can see, we have a body. So our web page has a background color of yellow. Okay, so we just want to set the body with the background yellow. So for CSS, you want to give your body a background of yellow. So this is the hex value. We have 4 F's and 2 zeros, and then save. Now what we want to do is to open our code up in the browser so that we can see how it looks like. Right, so yeah, this is the version that we are working with, and then we just have the background yellow, and then we should continue the styling. Okay, so the next thing you want to do is to access that class of ring and put some styling on it. Okay, so we want to give it a width of 330 pixels, and also want to give it the same height. Okay, nothing is showing up. If we add some borders, you should see the ring coming up very shortly. Okay, so the next thing is we want to give it a border of 2 pixels solid. So give your ring a border of 2 pixels solid, and then let's just give it some RGB. So you can see the a square or rectangle appear on your screen. We'll start that into a circle soon with the border radius, but let's just give it an RGB color, and let's give it 71 and 10 as well as 163. Okay, let's give it 163 and save, and you should see the color change there. Now for us to turn it into that circle that we want to give it a border radius of 50%. Okay, so let's give it a border radius of 50%. That should turn it into the circle that we want. Okay, yeah, so now we have a circular figure right here, and that's exactly how our individual logos will be spinning around the individual. So what will happen is we are going to put the image of the individual as the background of this ring here that we have created. Okay, yeah, so stay tuned. We will get to that part of the video, but we want to just position our ring. As you can see in the final project, this is in the center of our page. Okay, now if you use this in your personal project, you can reposition it the way you want, and then it should just work really well for you. Okay, so we want to give it a position of absolute. Okay, not inherit, we want absolute. And then we want to give it a top, bottom, left, right of 0. So let's give it top of 0. Let's set the left as well to 0, and then right and bottom 2 should be 0. Bottom 2 should be 0, and then let's just add a margin auto, and that should push it down to the center of the page. Okay, so let's give it a margin of auto, and let's save. Right, so now we have our circle at the center of our page, and then the next thing we want to do is we could either add this glowing border to the glowing shadow on the circle just right now, or add it in later. Okay, so in my case I'm just going to add it later on as we proceed. Now one thing to note is this logos that you are seeing are in their individual div. Okay, so they are a child of the parent ring. Okay, so what we want to do here is to create another circular ring, but where we have these logos in. Okay, so as you can see, they are all individual circles spinning, but in those circles we have embedded an image. Okay, so that's just what we want to do. So back in our HTML, inside the ring we want to create another div, and that div, let's give it a class of circle. Okay, now just so that you can give this a different class. You don't have to give it a class of circle. Just choose your own naming conventions as will suit your particular project. Okay, now let's get back to our CSS, and then let's access that class of circle. And then what we want to do is to give it a width and a height. Okay, so let's give it a width of 30 pixels and also a height of 30 pixels. All right, and save. Now if we give this a border, we should have it appear. Let's move on to the working directory. This is like what we are working on. I was on the final project. Okay, all right, so now let's give this a border. Let's give it a border and a background. Okay, so let's give this a background, and let's use the RGB. And then for red, we want to make the red 0, and that of green, let's make it 255. And then let's make sure we are doing the right thing, 5. And then for our blue color, let's give it a 13. Okay, and save. Yes, so once you give it a background, then you can see the background of our div, and now we can also give it a border radius of a 50%, so that we have that circular look as well. So let's give it a border radius of 50%, and if you save, you should see it turn to a circle as well. Now let's position this circle to the center of our main ring. So let's set the position to absolute, and let's just give it left, top, right, bottom of 0. So let's give it a top of 0, and let's give it the left of 0 as well, left of 0. We want to give it the right and bottom of 0s. Okay, so right of 0, and then we want to set the bottom to 0. Now let's give it a margin auto, and that should just push it as well to the center. Right, so now we have our inner circle at the center of the main ring. Okay, so yes, so this is how it looks like, and then we are working towards the final product, which looks exactly like this. Okay, so let's go ahead with the styling of the ring. So at this point we could decide to add the shadow to the main ring. So let's just do that. So in this case we are going to give the main ring a box shadow. So let's give it a box shadow, and then we give it 0 pixels. Let's give it the top and bottom of 9 pixels, 10 pixels. Now you can play with these numbers until you actually get the specification that meets your preference. So let's give it this hex value 7D, let's E, and then 8. Okay, right, so there we have it. And if you compare that to the final product, you should see that we have the same glowing background. Okay, now in this case we want to add an animation which apply to the animations of the inner circle that we have. Okay, so let's add animation to the outer ring. Okay, and then let's give that a glow, and then 1.5 seconds, and then want it to be linear, infinite, and then alternate. Okay, great. Yeah, so there we have it. For now, let's focus on having the inner circle spin around the main ring, and then once we are done with that, we can add the background image to the circle. Okay, so yeah, back to the circle. We want to give the circle the images. Okay, so we want to turn this circle into any of those images. So back to our HTML, and then we are just going to access any of those images that are in our images folder. So an image tag, and the source should be dot slash images, and then we want to access any of them. Okay, so let's just go for the CSS file. Okay, great. So yeah, so as you can see, our image is very large, so then in our CSS we can access that and make it a little bit smaller. So we want to access the circle class, and then that of the img, which is the image within that smaller circle, and then we just want to give it a height of 30 pixels and a width of 30 pixels. So I want to do width before height, so let's go to a width of 30 pixels, and then yeah, and there you have it. Okay, so now we've worked on our image, and then the next thing we want to do is to define our CSS keyframes. Okay, so what you do is you do add keyframes, and then you have some code suggestions which is in here. So you can go to add keyframes, and then what you want is to do a circle animation. Okay, circle, and then the next thing is animation, and then circle dash animation. Okay, great. So in here you define the transformation from and to, so with the angle as well. So what we want to do is from where we are animating from, so we want to transform. All right, we want to transform and rotate. We want to rotate 0 degrees, and then translate a negative 165. So you can play with these numbers and see how they affect the page. Translate negative 165, pixels, and then rotate 0 degrees as well. So we want to rotate 0 dg. Right now, nothing is happening. You will see this in action soon. Let's move on to 2. So now we are animating from and then to. Okay, so this will also have a transform, and then this transform will have a rotate of 360 degrees. So we have 360 deg, and then a translate of -165. Okay, so let's translate of -165 pixels, and then we want to rotate 0 degrees. Okay, but in this case we are rotating, let's rotate 360 degrees. Okay, 360 degrees, and then save. Okay, right. So the next thing we want to do is to apply that animation to the entire inner ring, okay, which we are calling the circle. Okay, so we want to access circle. Okay, and then we want to give it animation of circle animation with linear infinite. Okay, so let's set the animation, and then we are going to look at circle dash animation, and then we want it 3 seconds linear, and then you can see it in action right there, infinite. Okay, so this will just make it continuously spin around on our main outer ring. Okay, yes, so this is how you implement that of the inner circle spinning around the main ring. So one thing we can do now is we can add the background of this ring, which is the image that we have. Okay, so now we want to add the image as a background of the main ring. So let's set the background. Okay, and then URL, and then we want to put in the path to our image. So we are going to images, and then we are looking at this Afro man with his arms crossed. And then the next thing is we want to add some parameters to the image. Okay, so as you can see, the image has appeared, but the way the image is placed doesn't really get us to the final product that we have here. Okay, so we want to show the person's face as we have in the final product. Okay, all right, so now let's get into, so we want to give this 50%, 50%. So we are going to push this, and then we want to give it a background size of cover. Okay, so let's give it a background size. Let's go to the next line and we'll give it a background size, let's say background that size, and then we want to set that to cover. Okay, and save. All right, so now our image is properly positioned. We are heading toward the final product. We have so many other of the logos spinning around, and so what you can do now is to duplicate that circle class within the main ring. Okay, so right here you could duplicate this circle class. Okay, so you can just copy it and paste so many times. Okay, yes, so this in the final project would put in 2 CSS files, but the reason why you're not seeing the difference, like different logos spinning right now, even if you change this to a different logo. Let's go to gate and save. Yes, so now you can see that the gate is on top of our CSS, so that doesn't really show. It's because they are all animating at the same time. Okay, so one thing you want to do is to implement different timing for the logos. Okay, so we can add an ID to the individual class. So on that first div, let's add an ID. Okay, and then let's give this let's just call this CSS dash circle. Okay, and now what we want to do is to go to our CSS folder and access that class and give it a different timing. Okay, that ID rather. So we are looking at CSS dash circle. By the way, if you want to access a class, is this hashtag and then the particular ID you are looking for. Okay, so what we want to do is to give this a different animation duration. So let's set the animation duration to let's give this animation duration a 3 seconds. Okay, so let's give it 3 seconds and save. Okay, now let's do that for the data of gate. So let's give it an ID of let's say get that circle. Okay, and save. And then in here we can also access the ID of get that circle. Okay, now the reason why we are giving them the IDs is because the IDs are unique to certain tags. This animation dash duration, and then we want to give it, let's say, 5 seconds. Okay, and save. And now you can see the separation between the individual logos. So yeah, so if you wanted to apply that to all of the images, you all you have to do is to duplicate the circle class and assign the image path to the individual images that we have. And then the next thing you have to do is to give it an ID. So you are accessing the circle class, but we are only giving animation durations to the different IDs so that we can have the beautiful separations that happen between them all. Okay, so you can continue to duplicate that. So you can have different logos. I'm just going to add a few more of this. Let's pick and let's say HTML, and then the next one, let's pick up another logo. Let's say React.png. Okay, so let's give this also a different ID, and let's call it HTML dash circle. Now, just so you note, you can have different names for the IDs and classes as per your own preference. Okay, I just want to do this for simplicity. So an ID of, let's call this React dash circle. You can even call it React dash duration, since we are assigning this to the difference in duration of animation so that we can get the separations there. Okay, now as you can see, all the application has updated, but you can see React and then that of the HTML, they are all spinning at the same duration, so that's why you're not seeing it. So if we should go to our CSS and then apply the animation duration, so let's call this React that's circle, I don't know. And then what we want to do is to set the animation duration to something else. That's duration, and then let's set it to, let's 6 seconds and save. Okay, so as you can see, you see this, the separation between the HTML and that of Git and React. Okay, so let's do the same. All right, so as you can see, there's a very beautiful separation between that of React, HTML and Git. Okay, so one thing that we can continue to do is to add the rest of the logos, which is something that you can practice doing. So what you do is you just copy the div and then continue to add the other logos. Okay, so let's just do that for one of them. Okay, and then let's give this a different file, or let's give this a different ID. Okay, so I can see that we haven't added um the CSS image, but instead we've given the HTML a class of CSS that's circle. Okay, so you could correct that on your end, but what I want us to just continue to do is to rather give this CSS animate. Okay, and then in here you want to correct the path to the CSS image, so let's go to css.png and then save, and then you can see that we have css3 right there. Okay, so just back to our HTML, then we want to access that CSS animate class, css dash animate, and then we'll set the animation duration as well to any value at all that we want. So let's give it 9 seconds and save. Okay, so yes, so this will give us that separation between that of HTML and the CSS. Okay, then we have another issue where we can see our HTML, the separation between the Git and the HTML, but we know that yes. Okay, so we are accessing an ID, not the class. Okay, so for IDs we use hash to access that, and then we save. Okay, so now we have it, so we can see the separation there between HTML CSS. So you can practice by adding the rest of the logos that I have included in the images file. You could also download your own logos. You can download your own images that you can use. Okay, something that I've noticed here is that our logos don't have that rounded borders around them. Okay, so if you've also noticed that on your end, one thing I want to do is to go to our circle image, and I want you to just give it a border radius, border dash radius, and then we want to give that border radius of 50% and save. Okay, yeah, and so that applies that circular look to the button. Okay, so yeah, so that's it for today's video. If you enjoyed the video, be sure to subscribe, and I'll leave a link to all the files that you need, the images as well, and then you can go for the files and practice.